High five. Eyes on me. Hands to myself. Ears are listening. Volumes are down. And Jesus is in our hearts. Okay. So we're just going to review a little bit about our story that we read the other day. And we read that very first Easter, remember? Mm-hmm. And we learned about all the things that Jesus did before it came time for him to be crucified, and then what happens on Easter morning, right? Mm-hmm. So what I want to talk about with you today is characters and setting, okay? Now, those are two things that we've talked about in the past. So I want to think about first, not just the story that we heard today, but the story that we heard last week, okay? And I want you to think about it, and I want you to think about who the characters were in that story, okay? So first thing, who can raise their hand and tell us what a character is? Emma, what's a character? A person or an animal in the story, right? So think about that story that we read last week that had some characters. It had both. It had a little girl and it had some animals. Who remembers what they were? Lakin? Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Very good. So those were our characters in that story, okay? So this was our little cue card that we had hanging up for characters, right? So when we read stories, we want to pay attention to who the characters are because it helps us to understand the story, okay? So the other important part of a story is the setting. Who can raise their hand and tell me what the setting is? Allie?
A place.
A place, right? And it's the place that the story is happening. Now, does the setting of the story have to be the same for the whole story?
No.
No, because it can do what? What do the characters do? They kind of move around in the story sometimes,
Like
right?
if they were in a living room, watching TV, and then they got up and got some popcorn.
Okay, so they would go to the kitchen, right? So what I want you to do is close your eyes. I'm going to describe someplace to you, okay? Close your eyes, I'll tell you. All right, imagine this. Imagine that there are tables with chairs and pencil bags and a bench with water bottles, and there's windows and there's shelves. Where do you think we are, Arius?
School.
In our classroom, right?
So is that too easy to us?
That was easy. Well, let me see if I can get you on this one. If our classroom is the setting of the story, who would the characters be? Us, right? We would be the characters, right? So characters and setting, okay? Now, you guys did your worksheets already with the characters in the setting, okay? And you showed me that there's animals and there's people that are characters. And over here we had the playground and we had a school and we had a park. Those are places. Now tomorrow, we're going to add to what we are learning, okay? And we're going to review tomorrow the plot of the story. So the plot is the order that the story happens. Right? So let's talk about that for a second. That'll be tomorrow, but if we did things out of order, our story wouldn't make sense, right?
Like if there wasn't a period.
Right, yellow table up here, sign me. Lakin is making a good point. She said if there weren't periods in the story, it would all run together, and then our sequence would get all mixed up. That's a good point, Lakin. So, what we are trying to do is by the end of the week, I want you to be able to retell that first Easter story to me. Okay? So when we are going to retell a story, we need to know the characters. We need to know the setting. We need to put the story in the correct order. And then you tell me what happened. Sometimes there's a problem and then how we solved it. Okay? All right, so good job with the characters and the setting. And then we'll work on the plot tomorrow. And then by the end of the week, you'll be retelling me that story. Sound good? Okay.